Cheers. Brendan Chase, and I see that you're accompanied by Mr. Paul Lonsdale, who is known to many of us around the table. Welcome.
Mayor Dalzell and councillors, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all this afternoon about our submission. I will try and skip through it rather than read it verbatim, but I think it does set the context of what we're trying to say quite well. The CCBA was established in 2007 in response to a decline in the commercial environment in the city centre. And prior to the earthquakes of 2010-2011, we had around 500 members and provided retail management services in the central city, including security, marketing, events and retail advice. The CCBA received an annual grant of $150,000 for these services from the Christchurch City Council, and at the time of the 2010 earthquake, the CCBA had been making inquiries about achieving financial independence through a targeted rate on central city properties. So our focus post earthquakes was initially within the frame of the central city recovery plan. So that's and since then we've extended it out to include the innovation precinct and part of the south frame. Our boundaries now roughly being St Asaph Street, Manchester Street, out to Kilmore and Montreal Street. Since the return of commercial activity to the city centre, our work has been based around two key themes: promotion of the central city and advocacy for businesses in the CCBA service area. However, due to the gradual reduction in the annual grant we received from Council, and with a diminishing reserve of funds, latterly our main activities have been focused on advocacy and building membership. A brief summary of our achievements during the last 8 years have been growth in membership from around 25 members in the restart days to 361 as at 31st of March, the date of our submission, but 388 today. This is businesses and property owners, but I'd point out that only about 22 members are property owners. And in late August we engaged a membership development contractor, and our membership has grown predominantly through her work from about 239 members at the time she commenced. We've also developed the Christchurch Central City website and social media channels to promote businesses in the Central City with various promotional activities through these channels. And thirdly, we provide a collective business voice for our regeneration agencies, which we include Christchurch City Council, Takaro, Regenerate Christchurch, Development Christchurch Limited and Christchurch NZ to engage with. So today we're an organisation that represents businesses across most commercial sectors. Roughly 31% of our members in retail, 25% in hospitality, 28% in professional services, and the remaining 16% in property, leisure, arts, accommodation, education. So quite broad. Commercial activity in the central city is gaining momentum. The completion of some of the anchor projects and private sector commercial developments during the last year has further contributed to this. Developments recently completed and those underway or planned point to the central city continuing to gradually regain its place as Christchurch's prime commercial centre, and as an attractive destination for Christchurch residents and those from Canterbury, the South Island and further afield. And I note your comments, Mayor, about the central city being a central city for Canterbury, not just Christchurch. Our funding arrangements, brief history, 2014-15, we received a grant of $150,000, and in the following 3 years, $100,000 per annum, and then budgeted in the long-term plan, from 2015 through to 2025, is a reduced annual grant of $100,000 for this current year and $80,000 for the next year, but no budgeted funding in future years. So we're mindful of that. At the time the ladder budgets above were set, we think, well, the CCBA board was optimistic, as most other stakeholders in the Central City commercial environment were, that we would be close to fully functioning at a point some 8 years post-earthquake. We now know that those expectations have not been fulfilled, but we all see the encouraging progress. However, we are far from being at or over the threshold of a critical mass and having resumed normal trading patterns. Many of the retail and hospitality businesses in the Central City struggle to survive, particularly during the winter months. At the inception of the CCBA strategic plan a couple of years ago, we specified a program to achieve financial independence through the establishment of a business improvement district, or BID, and the introduction of a targeted rate to fund our ongoing operations on behalf of our membership. However, and this is a departure from it, we believe that the current commercial environment in the Central City makes it too soon for a BID to be established, especially if it were to include a targeted rate. We see the creation of the Central City Action Plan, which is a collective response formulated by Council, Christchurch NZ, Development Christchurch Limited, and the Canterbury Employers Chamber of Commerce, and its timeline as being significant recognition of, by its creators, of the difficult and challenging commercial environment presently prevailing in the Central City. We think other reasons for delaying the establishment of a BID include local body elections this year, and council staff had advised us that carrying out a BID poll may be problematic in administrative terms, in terms of access to available polling resources. Council staff further advised us that the current council BID policy thresholds of 60% of the roll voting and 50% with 50% of votes cast in favour constituting a positive result are too high to achieve a positive BID poll result, notwithstanding the current conditions of the commercial environment. So council staff drafted a revised policy which proposes thresholds of 25% and 50% respectively, and these minimum participation requirements may mean that just 12.5% of businesses could determine the imposition of a targeted rate. Our board, having discussed this, rejects that suggestion, that lowering the current thresholds, and holds the view that to do so would be undemocratic and would not provide a valid mandate to proceed with establishment of a BID. Our strong preference is for a more inclusive approach, and we need more time to reach out to and inform the rate-paying property owners, of whom only 22 are currently members, and businesses within our focus area of our value proposition. Council staff have advised us that there are approximately 1,700 rateable units within our focus area. Building up our membership to drive a more inclusive vote will ensure that BID would enjoy a strong mandate in the long run. We believe we can make solid steps in growing our membership in the coming 2 to 3 years. The Central City is currently an environment busy with different agencies supporting activity detailed in the Central City Action Plan, Christchurch NZ's marketing, Council's events and activation, property owner-led initiatives, interest and valuable input from the Chamber of Commerce. Building a value proposition in this complex for our organisation, in building a value proposition in this setting is complex for our organisation. In response, the most appropriate role for the CCBA appears to be guiding coordination between business promotion and public sector funded activity in order that the benefit of these resources is maximised or at least optimised. D, with the current support being funnelled through the Central City Action Plan, when the current support being funnelled through the Central City Action Plan is re-evaluated at the end of its 3-year lifespan, the enlarged CCBA membership will be in a better position to advocate for the types of activity it would want to sustain in the future. Business Improvement District self-funding would become a stronger proposition for members to consider in that context. In E, our board is not convinced that the introduction of a targeted rate in addition to current rates is at all appropriate in the immediate or long term, especially taking cognizance of the fact that the Central City property owners are already paying a business differential of 67% on their rates.
Look, thank you, Brendan. I mean, it's you've come to the end of your 10 minutes, which is always challenging when people want to ask questions, but I was actually surprised when I read in your submission about the suggestion that we were going to alter the bid arrangements. I'm not aware of that, and so we're going to have to take some further advice of that. I don't know whether it was a suggestion that had come from staff, but I don't think any of the committees have certainly looked at it. The Development Forum.
It was from staff and from the consultant that we'd engaged, which was introduced to us by council staff. So it was quite a strong directive that was necessary for the...
But it may well be that there is a view that it is a very high threshold to meet, but I would rather that the time was taken to actually work through the issues so that the threshold is met, because you don't impose a bid on an unwilling or disengaged electorate. It's not appropriate.
Yeah.
The whole idea of the bid is that the local community that is the subject of it, or the business district that is the subject of a bid, is willingly contributing more in order to get more than what their rates pay for. So I'm just a little bit concerned as to where you've got to. So can we take this part of it offline?
Yep.
I think the submission that you've made stands, and that you've made a request to council to consider extended funding for the CCBA, which is a matter we will take under advisement in relation to the consideration of the annual plan.
Yeah, thank you.
It's hugely over time.
Yes,
so could you answer a question on the membership, what your membership fees are? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So we were discouraged from doing that by the consultant. They thought it would be confusing. No, that's right. And we do have, we're starting at that sort of strategic plan review at a half-day workshop in a week. Yeah. Yeah. We are aware of a piece of advice Christchurch NZ have provided to council about funding for the CCBA, but it's not really for us to comment on.
Okay, well, we'll follow up on that. But as I say, when I read your submission, it was a surprise. It wasn't something that I was aware of. All right.
Thank you.